My mother was a very rich woman. She built a real estate empire from the ground up. She was a cold woman who only cared about business and her son, my brother, Raymond. Because he was the oldest, and he was just as cutthroat as her, she saw Raymond as the heir to her fortune, while I was just the other child. I learned very quickly to stay out of her way and do whatever she asked. Now, despite all that, I had a good life. I had plenty of money, and I'd found the love of my life. His name was Raj. He grew up in a poor but loving household, the exact opposite of my situation. We'd been together for 3 wonderful years, and I knew in my heart that he was my soulmate. He proposed on our 3rd anniversary. Best moment of my life. And then I told my family the big news, and everything changed. Raymond didn't seem to care one way or the other. He was already in a loveless marriage, and he couldn't wrap his brain around the fact that I actually had feelings for my partner. But my mother? She was horrified.
You can't marry him. He's beneath you. You'll get nothing out of it.
But I love him. Isn't that the only thing that matters? Raymond watched with this infuriatingly bemused smirk on his face as Mom and I got into a huge argument. She ordered me to call off the wedding, and for the first time, I told her no. She tried everything to convince me to change my mind, but when none of it worked, she walked over and whispered something horrible in my ear.
If you marry that man, I don't think it would be safe. I'm worried that he might have an accident.
I'll always remember that exact moment, and it made my skin crawl. I felt like throwing up. My own mother was talking to me like a mob boss. She basically threatened to murder Raj if I went through with the wedding. I had heard that she had done some shady things in the years that she had spent growing her empire, but I had never seen this side of her firsthand before. And the way she looked at me, I had no doubt she'd do it. She'd kill the love of my life just because he wasn't a good match. I ended things with Raj that weekend. I didn't tell him the real reason because I was too ashamed. Plus, I was worried that if he found out about my mother's threat, he'd tell me that he could live with the danger and convince me to marry him anyway. I couldn't let that happen. I simply told him that I didn't have feelings for him anymore. Well, a month later, Mom came to my apartment with some good news. I was in a deep depression at the time, scarfing down gallons of ice cream and barely leaving the couch. Mom said that she had found me a man, a better man. His name was Steve, and he was the son of a wealthy landowner outside of Miami. If I married him, Mom's company could buy all their land and make a boatload of money. It didn't matter that I'd never met Steve before. She wanted me to marry him to help her business. I should have said no. I should have screamed for her to leave my apartment. But I was at the lowest point in my life, and I didn't have the strength to stand up for myself. I told her that I'd like to meet him. 3 months later, Steve and I were married, just as Mom had wanted. I tried to tell myself that he was a good guy. We didn't have a spark, but he was handsome enough. Okay, in the bed. He spent most of his time driving around in his convertible and playing golf, so I didn't have to see him a lot. For a while, I convinced myself that I was happy. Eventually, the deal with Steve's family land went through, and we all made a lot of money. I accepted the fact that the rest of my life was going to be tolerable, but unfulfilling. And then I saw Raj again. We ran into each other on the beach. I took one look at him and started crying. All my old feelings came back, and I knew that I had made a mistake. He was the man I was truly meant to be with. We started talking, and I felt better than I had in a long time. Steve had gone to the bathroom at the time, but when he returned, he saw Raj and me together, and he saw the smile on my face. He angrily grabbed my arm and led me to the car without saying anything to Raj.
I know who that was.
Don't you dare speak to him again. That moment was a real turning point in our marriage. Steve became possessive. He started checking in whenever I wasn't at home. He'd wait up for me when I was late, demanding to know where I was and who I'd been with. He knew that I was in love with another man, and his fragile ego had turned him into a jealous bully. After a month of this torture, I had enough. I told him I wanted a divorce. He didn't say anything for a long moment. He just glared at me. If you leave me, I'll take everything you own. With horrifying coldness, he laid out his plan. How he'd get his lawyers to prove that I'd only married him for the land deal. How he would claim I was unfaithful. How he wouldn't stop until all of my property went to him, including my 20% stake in my mother's company. I didn't care. If anything, it felt freeing to sacrifice all ties to my rich, miserable life and start from scratch with Raj. I told him I'd draw up the papers. He stormed out. I felt weirdly euphoric for the next few days. But that ended when Mom came over for a surprise visit. I guess my lawyer had told her about the divorce papers, and Mom had gotten him to tear them up.
You can't divorce him. I refuse to let that take 20% of my company.
Now, of course, all she cared about was her company. It didn't matter to her that she was the reason that I had married that in the first place. It didn't matter that I was miserable. I told her that I'd made up my mind. Besides, she and Raymond had the rest of the stakes in the company. Steve's minority share wouldn't change anything. For a while, she seemed to back down. But then I realized she was just formulating a plan. Give it a month before you do anything rash. I have a feeling that your problems with Steve will go away soon enough. Once again, she was sounding like a mob boss. Her threat against Raj was very real, and now it sounded like she was doing the same thing to Steve. She was going to kill him. Whatever you're planning to do, don't. Just let me divorce him. Wait a month. I didn't wait a month. I found another lawyer who wasn't under my mom's thumb, and I drew up divorce documents, giving Steve everything he wanted, including the 20% stake. To keep my family off my back, I told them that Steve and I were trying to work through our problems, but in reality, he had already moved out. And I started seeing Raj again. I told him everything, and he was nothing but supportive. He knew that my family had forced me into this situation, and he was proud of me for finally standing up for myself. I didn't see my mom or brother for weeks, though Mom called every few days to check in. She always asked if Steve was okay. And weirdly, she kept asking if he had been on any joyrides lately. I thought that was weird. And then, out of nowhere, Raymond showed up at my house. Somehow, he had gotten word that the divorce was still going through, but rather than tell Mom, he wanted to talk to me directly. He really was our mother's mini-me. I didn't let him inside. We talked on the porch for a while. I listened to him list off all the reasons that marriage shouldn't be about love, but I kept telling him that it was too late. I was divorced, not just from Steve, but from my entire toxic family. I told him that Steve had already cleared out all his stuff, aside from his beloved convertible, which he wasn't going to be picking up until that weekend. Raymond's eyes lit up. Once again, all he cared about were possessions. The only non-business conversations he had ever had with my ex-husband were about that stupid car. Can I drive it? I mean, since he's not using it? Knock yourself out. I watched him drive off for a short ride along the coast, shaking my head over how messed up my family's priorities were. And then I went back inside and hugged Raj, glad that he didn't have to hear any of that conversation. That was the last time I saw my brother. A few hours later, I found out that he had swerved off the road and died instantly. I thought it was a tragic accident, until Mom called me that night.
Why did you let him drive your husband's car? How could you do this to your own brother?
So Mom had followed through with her plan to kill my husband. And it worked, just on the wrong person. Now you'd think that would be the end of my story. Karmic justice and whatnot. But it gets even crazier from there. A few months ago, I found out that Steve had remarried. His new wife is Raymond's widow. Both of them are perfect together. Cold and money hungry. And guess what that means? Together, they have the majority stakes in Mom's company. Mom lost everything because of her actions. Me, Raymond, and her company. I feel sorry for her, but she brought it on herself. Raj and I are married now. We are very, very happy. My mother spent most of last year in the hospital. She'd been a healthy person all her life, but then she had an accident. I won't go into the specifics, but she fell off of her porch and landed in the wooded area behind her house. She was too wounded to crawl back or shout for help. She spent a full day lying there, going in and out of consciousness before I finally found her. And the worst part was, I should have been there when she fell. If I hadn't canceled on her at the last minute, I would have seen her fall. Or maybe she wouldn't even have fallen in the first place. I felt awful. The recovery was a long, painful process. Her bones refused to heal, and several of her wounds were badly infected. I took off a lot of work to visit her at the hospital, and that always cheered her up. But as the months went on, I visited less and less. She said she understood, but I knew that if I was there more, her recovery would be much faster. I always used my job as an excuse, but the truth was, I had plenty of vacation days I could take. The real reason that I was so busy was Rachel, my girlfriend. Rachel demanded a lot of my time, and I thought she was worth it. She was gorgeous, much better looking than me. I accepted that she was high maintenance, even though I always felt guilty that I chose time with her over my own sick mother. Deep down, I knew that she was doing it on purpose, scheduling dates and inviting me over when she knew that I was planning to visit Mom. She was forcing me to pick sides, knowing full well that I'd always choose her. Well, after 7 months in the hospital, Mom's phone calls were sounding much more desperate. "Honey, I know you have a lot of work, but I'd love to see your face tonight. It would mean a lot." I told Rachel that I needed to visit my mom that evening. And of course she tried to talk me out of it. "Oh, but I thought we were going to that movie I keep talking about. It's opening night." I had no idea what movie she was talking about. It was one of her more shameless excuses. And for the first time, I told her no. I said that I really needed to see my mom. She didn't argue, but I could tell she was pissed. I was so glad I went, though. I sat by Mom's bed and we talked for hours. Afterwards, her nurse pulled me aside and said that this was the most energetic that she had been in weeks. That was a turning point for me. I started telling Rachel no a lot more often. I actually stood up for myself. Mom seemed to be getting better just from my presence. And I actually felt more confident in myself. My girlfriend had treated me like a doormat, but not anymore. And then it happened. Mom was finally released from the hospital. She still had a long way to go before she was back to normal, but she could go live at home again. She needed crutches, and a nurse came by every day to check on her. I helped her get settled in, and I visited her for the next few days. I made her promise to stay off the porch. The railing was still broken, and I didn't want her to fall off again. Well, one day, Rachel insisted that she come with me on my visit. She really didn't like my mom, but she said that she wanted to pay her respects, whatever that meant. I had a feeling that she wanted to see how well my mom was doing so that she could tell me that I didn't need to visit her as often anymore. It was a total mind game with her. I knew that now. Well, Mom countered with a mind game of her own. On that visit, she acted much more feeble than before. She made a big show of nearly falling off her chair. She dropped her water and asked me to clean up the shattered glass. Now, I hated to admit it, but I thought that the whole situation was hilarious. Mom was obviously exaggerating her illness as a passive-aggressive form of revenge against my girlfriend. Good for her. I still loved Rachel, and I would still do anything for her, but I had a twisted new respect for my mom that day. Anyway, life seemed to go back to normal after that. Rachel and I still spent most of our free time together. I still showered her with presents and spoiled her whenever I could. But once a week, I visited Mom. She seemed to get better every time. And Rachel seemed to get more annoyed. Her possessive streak was really coming out. Just one night a week, she wasn't the center of attention. And that really bothered her. And then, one night, we had a fight. It was our biggest one yet. It came out of nowhere. She said that I had no reason to visit Mom since she wasn't sick anymore. I told her that was an awful thing to say. She stormed out. It was a 10-minute argument, maybe less. I assumed that she'd just cool off and come back. She didn't. The next day, I got a little worried and called her friends. No one knew where she was. I started to get nervous. Well, the day after that, I visited Mom as usual. She seemed in especially high spirits. We had a nice long lunch together. And then I mentioned my fight with Rachel, and a sly smile spread across her face.
That's strange. I could have sworn I saw her car parked on the edge of my driveway. Maybe she's nearby.
I rushed to the window, and sure enough, Rachel's car was outside. I looked all over the property, but I couldn't find her. Mom waited inside, sipping her juice and watching me rush around. And then I went to the wooded area under her porch, to the exact spot where Mom had her accident. Rachel was unconscious on the ground. Both her legs were broken, and she had scratches all over her body. That's when Mom joined me outside. She didn't bother using her crutches anymore. She didn't need them.
Oh, dear. I had no idea she'd fallen. What a horrible accident.
The ambulance took Rachel away. Doctors operated on her for hours, treating her wounds and fixing up her 5 broken bones. She was in terrible shape and a lot of pain. Mom and I were both in the waiting room. I was a nervous wreck, but Mom seemed unnervingly blank. Mom, what happened? You saw her fall, didn't you? My mother very casually explained that Rachel had snuck onto her porch and had covered the floorboards with water. She was obviously trying to create an ice patch right in front of the broken railing. She wanted to restage Mom's accident to finally get her out of my life. But, as she was doing that, she slipped and fell, suffering the exact same injuries that she had been trying to inflict on my mom. Broken bones, deep scratches, and no one to rescue her as she lay on the ground. It felt like the ultimate irony, practically unbelievable. But there was something really dark about Mom's expression. I had to ask, You didn't push her, right? Right?
Of course not, sweetie.
I was sitting on the sectional in the living room, staring at the dust motes dancing in a shaft of afternoon light. My son, Leo, was finally asleep in his bassinet. He was 3 weeks old, and I was running on caffeine and the kind of hollow, vibrating exhaustion that makes your eyes sting. My husband, Mark, was still at work, pulling a double shift. It was 2:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the time because I had just looked at the microwave clock, calculating how many minutes I had before my mother arrived. She was coming over to hold the baby so I could take a shower that lasted longer than 3 minutes. Then came the knock. My brain, sluggish and fogged over, immediately went to Mom. She usually parked round back and came in through the garage code, but maybe the keypad was acting up again. Or maybe her hands were full of casseroles. I didn't get up, I just shouted, "Come in! It's unlocked!" Because why wouldn't I? We lived in a subdivision in Ohio where the biggest crime was someone leaving their trash cans out a day late. The door handle turned. The heavy oak door creaked open, letting in a slice of blinding daylight. "In here, Mom. Don't wake the beast. He just went down." But the footsteps were wrong. My mother walks with a brisk, purposeful clip. These steps were shuffling, scuffing against the hardwood, heavy, uneven. Standing in the entryway was not my mother. It was a woman I had never seen in my life. She looked to be in her 60s, but a hard 60s. Her hair dyed a violent, unnatural shade of raven black that showed an inch of gray roots. She was wearing a dirty pink windbreaker and oversized sunglasses, despite being inside. She stood there, swaying slightly, looking at my family photos on the console table.
Oh, nice place. Real nice.
I stood up, instinctively moving between her and the bassinet. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" She turned to look at me, lowering the sunglasses. Her eyes were watery and pinned.
You said come in,
she said, a weird, crooked smile spreading across her face.
I heard you. You yelled it. Come in, you said.
I thought you were my mother. You need to leave, now. She waved a hand dismissively, taking a step further into the living room.
Now, don't be like that, honey. I'm in a bit of a pickle. A real situation.
She gestured vaguely toward the front door.
My car, it's dead. Just died right at the end of your driveway. Alternator, I think. Or maybe the spirits got it.
She laughed. I can call a tow truck for you, I said, reaching for my phone on the coffee table. My hand was shaking. What's the number? Do you have AAA?
No,
she said quickly, stepping closer. Too close.
I don't need a tow. I need a ride. Just a quick run. Up to the Sunoco on Route 4. It's 5 minutes. I just need to get there.
I can't drive you, I said, gripping the phone. I have a baby.
Bring the baby. Babies like car rides. Put him to sleep.
He is asleep. And I'm not waking him up to drive a stranger to a gas station. You need to wait outside. I'll call the police. They can help you. At the mention of police, her face changed. The crooked smile vanished, replaced by a sudden, jagged anger.
I don't need the cops,
she shouted.
I need to get to the Sunoco. I have a winning ticket. You hear me? I have a scratch-off. I won $500 and I have to cash it in before the shift changes. That clerk, the one with the lazy eye, he steals them if you don't cash them quick.
I don't care about your ticket, I said, stepping back, shielding the bassinet with my body. I don't have a car seat installed in my truck right now. I can't go anywhere. This was a lie. The car seat was in the Jeep. But the lie felt safer than the truth.
You don't have a car seat?
No.
For a baby?
It's in my husband's car. She looked at the bassinet and then back at me, her expression twisting into something grotesque. She pointed a finger at me, the nail bitten down to the quick.
That's just inappropriate!
She screamed. The volume made me flinch. Leo stirred in the bassinet, letting out a small whimper.
Quiet!
I whispered furiously.
Get out! Inappropriate!
She yelled again, stepping forward. She was in the living room now, fully inside.
You have a baby and no car seat? What kind of mother are you? What if there's a fire? What if you need to run? That's neglect. That is purely inappropriate behavior.
Get out of my house. I'm calling 911 right now. You have 5 seconds.
You think you're better than me?
She screamed. She looked around the room, her eyes darting frantically.
Sitting in your big house with your big TV? You won't even help a fellow citizen cash a ticket. I need that money. It's mine. I earned it.
I'm dialing, I said, thumbing the emergency button on the iPhone screen. She lunged, not at me, but toward the side table where my purse was sitting.
Give me my $20, Dad.
She screamed again.
If you won't drive me, pay for my Uber. That's fair. That's the best thing to do.
I don't have cash.
Liar. Everyone has cash.
She grabbed the strap of my purse. I dropped the phone and grabbed the other end of the strap. Let go! I screamed.
You selfish. That's inappropriate. Hoarding it all.
Leo started to cry. A full-blown, lung-clearing wail. The sound seemed to break something in her. She let go of the purse so suddenly that I stumbled back, hitting my hip against the wall. She looked at the crying baby, her face twitching.
You woke him up,
she muttered.
You woke him up, bad mother.
Get out! I roared, grabbing a heavy glass vase from the mantel. I didn't care about the flowers. I held it like a club. Get out! She looked at the vase, and then at me. For a second, I thought she was going to charge me. Her hands were balled into fists, trembling. Then we heard the sound of tires crunching on gravel, the sound of an engine cutting, the heavy thud, clunk of a car door closing.
Hello?
My mother's voice floated through the open front door, cheerful and oblivious.
Sarah? Why is the front door wide open? You're letting the AC out.
The old woman's head snapped toward the door. The color drained from her face beneath the tan. The bravado evaporated instantly, replaced by the scurrying panic of a cockroach when the lights flick on.
I'm leaving. You're a terrible mother,
she muttered. She spun around and sprinted, actually sprinted, toward the door. My mother was just stepping onto the threshold, holding a Tupperware container of lasagna. She froze as this wild-haired woman barreled toward her.
Excuse me!
The woman yelled, shouldering past my mother hard enough to knock the lasagna sideways.
Hey!
My mom shouted, spinning around. Who the hell?
Don't touch me!
The woman screamed over her shoulder. She didn't head for a car. She ran across the lawn, cutting through the neighbor's side yard, disappearing into the wooded buffer zone that separated our cul-de-sac from the main road. There was no car at the end of the driveway. She had walked here. I dropped the vase. It didn't break, just thudded onto the rug. My legs gave out. Then I sat down hard on the floor, shaking so bad my teeth chattered. Sarah! Mom rushed over, dropping the food on the table. Oh my God, who was that? Are you okay? Is Leo okay? Lock the door. Lock the door, Mom. We called the police. 2 deputies came out about 20 minutes later. They took a description. Pink windbreaker, bad dye job, obsession with inappropriate car seats. They looked tired. Oh, we've had calls about her, the older deputy said, scribbling in his notebook. She hangs out by the gas station on Route 4. Usually just harasses people for cigarettes or scratch-offs. Never heard of her entering a home before. That's escalation. She said she needed to cash a ticket, I said, holding Leo tight against my chest. Yeah, that's her bit. Always a winning ticket. Always an emergency. He sighed. We'll patrol the area, ma'am. Keep your doors locked. Don't yell, "Come in," unless you know who it is. I felt stupid. I felt small. I felt like I had endangered my son because I was too lazy to get up off the couch. I will be careful next time. When Mark got home that night, I was a wreck. He went around the house checking every window, every lock. He held me while I cried, telling me it was over. She was gone. Just some crazy lady off her meds. I barely slept. Every creak of the house sounded like a pink windbreaker swishing against the drywall. Around 3 a.m., I heard the noise. Glass breaking. It came from the driveway. I shot up in bed, my hand instantly shaking Mark's shoulder. Mark, wake up!" "What?" he grunted. "Glass! Outside!" Mark was up in a second. He grabbed the baseball bat he kept under the bed. A cliché until you actually need it, and went to the window. He peeked through the blinds. "Son of a," he whispered. "Is it her? Is she back?" "Someone's in the truck. I'm calling 911. "Don't go out there!" I begged. He didn't. We waited for the lights. The response time was faster this time. Blue and red strobes washed over our bedroom walls in under 6 minutes. By the time the cops got there, the driveway was empty. Mark went out to talk to them. I watched from the window. They were shining flashlights into the bed of Mark's Ford F-150. When Mark came back inside, he looked pale. Furious, but pale. "What happened? Did they take the stereo?" "No, they didn't touch the cab. They broke the back window of the camper shell." Mark ran a side hustle. He worked HVAC during the day, but his real money came from flipping high-end commercial espresso machines and restaurant equipment. He'd buy them broken from bankrupt cafes, fix them up, and sell them for a massive profit. "They took the La Marzocos," he said. "The espresso machines? Those things weigh like 80 pounds each." "They took 3 of them. And the box of grinders. That's 10 grand, Sarah. Easy." "How? How did they know they were in there? The shell has tinted windows. You can't see in." Mark looked at me, and the realization hit us both at the same time. "The woman," I whispered. "She wasn't crazy," Mark said grimly. "Or maybe she is crazy, but she's useful." The police put it together later. It was a ring operating out of the next county over. They used so-called walkers, usually older, mentally unwell, or homeless women who looked harmless enough to be ignored or pitied. They'd send them into neighborhoods during the day to knock on doors. If no one answered, they'd check the side yards. If someone did answer, like I had, they'd make up a manic story, act unhinged, and cause a scene. But while she was inside screaming about car seats and scratch-off tickets, she wasn't just being crazy. She was scanning. She was looking for keys, for alarm pads, for anything of value. And when she walked up the driveway, she wasn't just stumbling. She was looking through the windows of the vehicles. She wasn't a lost old lady looking for a ride. She was a spotter. A bird dog pointing the way for the hunters. She knew the husband wasn't home and the wife was distracted with a newborn. The police didn't catch her, and I never saw her again.
My mom took me to Starbucks to have a private chat. She didn't tell me what it was about, but I knew that she wanted to tell me something serious. I got there first and drank my iced tea, nervous about what my mom was going to tell me. When she finally arrived, she seemed perfectly fine. She ordered a coffee for herself and then sat across from me. She smiled and asked me about my day. I told her that I was fine and everything was normal. "Good to hear," she said. "Unfortunately, I have some bad news." She went on to tell me that she was planning to divorce my father. She wanted to tell me in person before she filed the paperwork. I was absolutely floored. My parents had been married for nearly 30 years, and they always seemed so happy together. I never saw them argue. I asked her what had changed, and she said, sometimes people grow apart. There was obviously something she wasn't telling me. I'm 26, but at that moment, I felt like a little kid. I didn't want my parents to break up. I wanted to argue with her, tell her to reconsider. But I stopped myself. It wasn't my decision to make. I asked her, does Dad know? Oh, he knows. The tone of her voice proved that there was definitely something she wasn't telling me. Okay, well, I love you both, and I'm sorry this has to happen, I said. I didn't know what else to say. We stayed at Starbucks for a couple more minutes, but I really didn't have anything else to talk about. She thanked me for understanding, and then I left. I didn't do anything for the rest of the day. I was too distracted. Honestly, I was mostly worried about my dad. Unlike a lot of families, my mom was the breadwinner, while Dad was the stay-at-home spouse who took care of me and my sister. What was he going to do after the divorce? He hadn't had a real job in decades, so he'd have to maybe work at some fast food restaurant or something. The next day, I called in sick to work. I still wasn't in the right headspace, and I needed to see both my parents face to face. Maybe then I'd hear the full story. I called Mom to say that I was coming over, but she didn't answer. A little before noon, I drove out to their house. Both their cars were still in the driveway. I knocked on the door, but no one answered, so I let myself in. That's when I saw my dad's body lying in a pool of blood on the living room floor. He had a bullet hole in the middle of his forehead. I screamed. From the other room, I heard my mom's voice. Jane, is that you? I followed her voice to the bathroom. She was sitting on the floor, trembling. Is he gone? At first, I thought she was talking about my dad, but then I realized she was talking about someone else who murdered my dad. Chills ran down my spine. The killer might still be in the house. I ran inside the bathroom and locked the door behind me. Tell me what happened. Mom breathlessly explained that Dad had gotten mixed up with some shady people. She didn't know all the details, but she told me that he owed them a lot of money. That was the reason why she wanted to divorce him. She said that she was in the bathroom when she heard the man come in to argue with my dad. Then she heard the gunshot. I love my father so much. I really couldn't believe that he'd get mixed up with all these criminals. It was just too much to process. I pulled out my phone and called 911. The dispatcher said that they would send someone right away. I begged her to hurry because I didn't know if the killer was still here. Just stay where you are and keep the doors locked, the lady on the phone told me. That was the best she could do. I hung up the phone and then sat next to Mom on the floor. I wrapped her in a big hug and told her how sorry I was. Even though she was planning to divorce Dad, I knew that she still loved him. I could feel her trembling arms. We waited for the cops to arrive. I glanced at the door, trying to hear any noises or footsteps outside. The house was completely quiet. I can't believe he's dead, she muttered. At least she didn't have to see his body. She heard the gunshots, but she didn't have that terrible image in her head. Dad lying dead on the ground. It was all I could think about. He had his problems, Mom continued. But no one deserves to get shot in the head like that. I instantly pulled away from her. What did you say? She looked at me confused. You didn't see what happened, right? So how do you know he was shot in the head? Mom's face went instantly blank. Oops, she said. I jumped to my feet. You? Slowly, she stood up as well. Damn it, Jane. You're too smart for your own good. She stepped closer, her face blank, and placed one hand on my shoulder. You're not going to tell the police, are you? I didn't answer. I could barely breathe. He was going to take everything in the divorce, she said. I couldn't let him do that. She squeezed my shoulder hard enough to hurt. Mom, I said very slowly. Where's the gun? Disposed of, she said. Don't worry, I won't hurt you. I didn't believe that. If she could murder her husband of 30 years, what would stop her from killing me too? I pushed her away. Please, Jane. It'd be so much easier if you just play along. I opened the bathroom door and ran out. But Mom surged forward and grabbed me by the waist. I was surprised at how strong she was, and she shoved me to the ground. Desperate, I grabbed a lamp from the table next to me and held it up as a weapon. If she tried to attack me again, I would slam it into her. "Stay back," I screamed. That's when the front door opened and 3 policemen charged inside. Mom looked over towards them and screamed, "Help, she wants to kill me too." The policemen pointed their guns at me. "Drop the weapon," one of them ordered. "It's not me," I tried to explain. "Drop the weapon." I put the lamp back on the ground, and the cops rushed out to handcuff me. I'm in a holding cell now, waiting to tell my side of the story. I know that Mom spent a lot of time covering her tracks, but I pray there's something she forgot, something that'll prove that I'm innocent. For now, all I can do is wait.